All right, everyone. It is 6:30 p.m. here on the East Coast, and I'm Demetrius Frazier, owner of Resist Booksellers, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have my special guest tonight. We're gonna have a good conversation. We're gonna have a little bit of a chat on history, about great writing, all for this book here, The American Queen, written by none other than Vanessa Miller. So, Vanessa, before we get started, you are now working on another published work. It's out in the world. Before we get into anything else, how are you doing today? How about that? Let's start with that.
I'm doing good. A little tired, but that's par for the course. It's a lot to do. To get out here and promote these books after you write them. You have to promote them,
That's right. That's right.
and
And I
so
and I think I saw a video of you wearing a dress with the flowers that kind of matched the cover.
yes, absolutely. I see. I'm weird like that. When I get a book cover, I try and find an outfit that matches my book cover.
So if
So
you are not following Vanessa, I saw it on Instagram, might be other places, but there is an outfit that matches this part right here. I'm
yes.
just going to leave it at that. I want to let you enjoy it when you see it. So appreciate you one being here and stopping with us here on this virtual tour, virtual part of the tour. You've been in other places, other bookstores, and more to come. So much success going forward, and I hope the book does fantastically well. I want to give them a little bit of your bio. We'll work into the book itself as we go along, but there's a couple of things in here, and I think we talked in behind the scenes that I was thrilled to hear about you, and I think it adds more context to how you wrote this book. So one, Vanessa Miller is a best-selling author, playwright, and motivational speaker. She started writing as a child, spending countless hours either reading or writing poetry, short stories, stage plays, and novels. Vanessa's creative endeavors took on new meaning in 1994 when she became a Christian. Since then, her writing has been centered on themes of redemption, often focused on characters facing multi-dimensional struggles. Vanessa's novels have received rave reviews, with several appearing on Essence Magazine's bestsellers list. Miller's work has received numerous awards, including Best Christian Fiction Mahogany Award and the Red Rose Award for Excellence in Christian Fiction. Miller graduated from Capital University with a degree in organizational communication. She is an ordained minister in her church, explaining, God has called me to minister to readers and to help them rediscover their place with the Lord. So I'm reading this book and I'm saying, oh man, this book is filled with love and victory and joy. And I read your bio after I read the book. I was like, oh, it makes sense now because your
Makes
mission
sense.
in life lines up with how you wrote the book. So let's start there. The
Absolutely.
book American Queen, before we get into all the compliments and stuff, it's a great book. Go get the book. How would you describe this book if you were telling the folks for the first time, if they've never heard what the American Queen is about?
Oh, well, first I want to say I was ordained at my church in Dayton, Ohio. I now live in North Carolina, and my husband is the ordained minister, and I'm just working on these books.
Let's clear it up. Look, don't be coming looking for her to do a funeral or a baptism. Not right now.
God, yes, I'm very definitely a faithful member of my church.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, so I'm busy. I just really believe that writing is my ministry, and so I've been busy with writing. And The American Queen is my book. It is my love letter to history,
Mm,
and it is the book that I believe that needed to be written about this wonderful woman named Luella Bobo Montgomery. She becomes Queen Luella. And that is what the story is about. It really it centers on, and we were talking earlier about it centers on themes of love, of forgiveness, of of striving. And it's really about the grit
that's right.
to
That's right.
to to strive and survive, when people are not giving you any options to survive, because a lot of people don't understand with emancipation They think, oh, the slaves were free. Hallelujah.
That's right.
And yes, hallelujah. But there was no rule book out there for them as far as what to do next. Nobody was really, there, and they didn't get those 40 acres and a mule, as they were
They didn't get a
now. The
Cadillac and a
place, the
three-story home.
place where they did get the acres is in Tulsa. And
Right,
I'm
right,
writing
right.
a whole nother story on that. That comes out in 2025. But
You heard that, people, right?
for most of us, they didn't get that. And so people were wandering around, trying to figure it out. And along comes these people who William believes that God has a promised land for them. And it's really a story about how a community is built. Oh, excuse me. A community is built, uh, and how they each decide. Their motto was all for one and
And
one
one
for
for
all.
all. That's
And
right.
so how they decide to all build together, so that each one would have something.
Now explain to them, and they'll get this when they read the book completely. Explain to people how you got this story, because I feel like this is even a fascinating point to even get into writing this novel.
Well, it really happened as I was coming back into traditional publishing. I wrote a book titled Something Good. That was my first women's fiction title as I came back into traditional publishing. And I needed endorsements. And so I contacted Lisa Wingate. She's number one best-selling author. She sold over 3 million copies of her book, Before We Were Yours. And I just love her writing. And I didn't know her at the time. I know her now, but I didn't know her at the time. But I just reached out to her. And she is such a beautiful person that she said, I told her my story about coming back in, and I really needed an endorsement. And she said, I know you need a hand up. She said, I've been there. Send me
Hmm.
the book and let me look at it. And so she gave me an endorsement on Something Good. So I went back and I said, thank you. So this is for other people. It's always good to go back and say thank you to people when they've done something for you. And I told her I happened to be reading another book of hers, and I said, I'm really enjoying this book. And she said, I found out about that particular story from a Facebook friend of mine. She said, another Facebook friend told me about the Kingdom of the Happy Land people. Since you live in North Carolina, you might want to research this.
Right,
And so
right.
I went and I did a little research, and I went back to her and I said, wait a minute. Are you saying for me to research it so I can write this story? Because I wanted to write it, but I wasn't used to authors, giving up stories.
Right, right. They probably keep it all to themselves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she said, yes, Vanessa, I think you're the perfect person to write this story. And when I took it to my editor, she was in love with the story immediately as well. And we were like, yeah, we have to do this. And so that's how it all came about. Someone telling me something that someone, because I live right here in North Carolina,
And you
and
wouldn't have
I
known.
did not know this even existed. There are so many people that have never heard of the Kingdom of the Happy Land people, and it's a true story. They owned this land and had this kingdom for about 30 years.
So here it is, and I don't have this question on the paper, but here it is. We got this true story.
Hmm.
It's you're in the state at this point. You could ask natives who were there for a long time, they probably didn't know.
Right.
But how do we get more of these types of stories, the unknown positive stories, in this case specifically around the formerly enslaved? How do we get these stories not only told, written, but also that last part is published? Like what would you suggest if you had your way to get more of these stories out in the world and in books like yours?
I think publishers are more willing to publish our stories now. So writers have to go and do their research. They have to find these hidden treasures that are out there. And there are so many stories of our people doing heroic things, doing things that seem like the impossible, or just things that are just so inspiring. So go find those stories and write about it, and write it in such a way that a publisher feels like they have to
Yeah, right there you go.
publish your story. Don't just sit there and just put something on paper and turn it in and think, oh, they're gonna just publish it. Because no, you have to not only research it, but you got to write that thing as if your life depended on it. You have to make this the best thing you've ever written. And I truly believe that American Queen is the best book I have written to date. And this is my 54th book.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a big statement, because this is not your first rodeo.
Not my first
Getting a
rodeo.
completed workout. And I would think, to the point of, good writing and all that stuff, getting your research. There's a delicate line there, especially if you're writing in a fictional work where you want to be true to the story that really happened, but also you're a fiction writer, right? You're trying to make sure the story flows and has pieces in it. And you actually talked about that inside of your notes for the book, that there were some things that you may have added or twisted a little bit, not in a negative way, like you're making up stuff, but you kind of took it a little to the right, little to the left. What would you say as a writer, your responsibility in writing something like this? Great story, real story, but then also writing it in a fictional space.
Well, I wanted to honor the people who once lived and moved on this earth, the people of the kingdom of the happy land. So I wanted to make sure that there were some things that, as I found in the research, that as a fiction writer, I would have told that story differently. But but it's their story. So I had to tell their story and just find a way to write it in such a way that, the reader is so compelled to just keep on reading, because their story is really a magnificent story.
It
But
is.
but because of the way history has treated African Americans, where there isn't a lot of times a lot of information out there on us during slavery times. There
Mhm.
were times where I had to, just put on my fiction writer's hat, but always in continuing their journey in the way it was, and so I'm taking them on this journey because I know how they left from where they were and how they journeyed to get to their land. And so my job then is, I'm going to tell you a story about them in these certain places, because then I know they were picking up people as they went from state to state. They
Right,
they
right.
they journeyed from Mississippi through Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina to get to their promised land in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina. They left Mississippi with 50 people, but by the time they get to North Carolina, it's 200 people with them. So I know this. So now I have to write it to let you see, as the reader, how this could transpire. So those were some of the things that I did as my job as to write the novel part of a true story.
And you kept in some stuff that in a real life, real world setting is stuff that would happen. So if you have someone who's pregnant along the road,
Yes.
maybe she will get tired. Maybe her feet will hurt,
Yeah.
and how would that work out when, hey, maybe we don't have a lot of seats for everybody?
Correct.
How would that work? And you work through those pieces in a way that I would think feels logical, right?
Yes.
It's, yeah, of course we can't make every person, be able to sit in the car. What about the rest of the people? The
There
water.
was no car,
There
the
was no car.
wagon.
There's no minivan, right?
No,
There's
no.
there's no rest stop.
Yeah, we're in the 1800s.
Yeah,
It's a wagon and it's your feet.
yeah. It's and even the parts around, it's still not safe, right?
Correct.
So here as you're going along this road, you don't know exactly where you're headed. You're just heading away, and
Absolutely.
you may run into some things. And I thought some of those pieces just felt, whether it was something you found in your research or you put in as a fictional writer to fill in some of the
Hmm.
gaps, it felt real. Like it
Yes.
felt like this could happen. This makes
Hmm.
sense, even though it's not like now. Of course, I could
Yes.
stop at a rest stop along the interstate, but
Right.
in this case, we couldn't. So, as you're writing those pieces, like what was how do you how do you avoid that like urge to just like, all right, I'm gonna spend a bunch of time on this piece that, even though I don't have a ton of research, maybe they stop somewhere and I want them to stop there for a month, and you're taking liberties, if you would, with the story. How do you fight that as a fictional writer?
Well, as I say, I wanted to make sure I was honoring them and their journey. And in the research, it talked about the fact that uh, this is what they said they did. They would sleep in empty barns, and during Emancipation time, a lot of plantations had been evacuated, if you will. The former slave owners couldn't afford it. They had been abandoned. So they would find these abandoned buildings, structures, and they would sleep in those. And as they continued on for maybe a couple of days, and then they would
Right.
continue on because their whole mission was to get north. So even though they find this abandoned over here in the South, they're not going to stay there. They want to keep journeying towards the North. And so everything that I'm putting in there is basically, as what I researched, is just to tell their story. Because I can't sit with them and say exactly what did you do. So
What were
I
you
have
thinking? Right.
Right. Yeah. So I have to kind of, reimagine this based on, but always based on the research that I discovered.
So I do want to get into the book because I feel like as a fiction writer, and every fiction writer, good one, does this. They have characters you fall in love with, and characters, I don't know how to say this, that you just want to strangle. And I think you know which one I want to strangle.
Yes,
Uh,
the same
but
one I wanted to strangle.
oh my goodness. People, if you have, when you read this book, you will feel the same way. I guarantee it. I don't care what angle you come from. There's a character in this book. His name is Robert. Uh, and to tell I don't want to give away too much of the story, but to tell a backstory, Robert and William are brothers, right?
Yes,
And they are the offspring of a plantation owner, slave master, correct?
correct.
And one of them is a little bit more browner, and one is white passing. But the white passing one is Robert. And
Mhm.
Robert, tell me how you got to this point where he owns, like, when you got to that point in the research, did that like bother you that he owned a
It did.
plantation? He
It
had his slave
did.
workers.
It did. He owned 7 slaves, and he owned a farm during slavery time because he was passing as white. But further research, not necessarily on them, but just research during on the time period, and
Mhm.
also talking with some of my other author friends who have researched this time period, kind of showed that a lot of us who were passing as white owned slaves because it was what they did during the times. But some of them were owning like their family members. And
Okay.
so it was to get them out of
Okay.
other conditions. So whether that was it or not, the research didn't tell me that these were family members, so I didn't write them as family members. And so, but it still it bothered me that you can know that you're black and you own us, because to own someone is like an atrocity to
It
me.
is. It is.
And so yeah, that part was a problem for me from jump. And
And
so
it never, that never occurred to me. And this is, again, we're all going through this phase of like stuff we don't know. We're grown adults, and it's still
Mhm,
uncovering things that we probably should have known by now.
right.
But that dynamic was hard for me to even kind of conceive in my head, that there would be two children from the as offspring of the white plantation owner,
Mhm.
slave master,
One
that
was
had,
born free
right.
and
And then
one was
one
not.
was, he was like the house manager, or I
Yes.
forgot what the term was.
Yes.
Two very different lives, and they're still brothers, right? And they still figured out a way to love, respect, help one another,
Yes.
to the point where Robert is on the journey to Happy Land.
Yeah. Well, you got to think about it. After emancipation, he was just like the rest of the former slave owners, broke.
Right,
They were,
right.
see, Civil
Especially
War
when
was
everybody else on his plantation decided,
right.
deuces, we're out of
Yeah,
here.
right, and the Civil War was not kind to the plantation owners. They lost they lost a lot. They did not have money like they did before, and so Robert was just like that. He did not have the conveniences he once had. So his brother's like, "Well, we're leaving," and he's like, "Well, I want to be black again too."
I want to go with y'all. I
I'm
mean,
coming with y'all.
and that, and even that
I'm
part,
being funny about it, but I'm
well,
just
we just talked about that at the beginning, the love, right? And in this particular case, love is very difficult, because it could have been very easy for William to say, I have a wife, you coming with us, not only my wife and I, but the people who are around here, the people you
mhm,
had as enslaved, are coming with us too.
right.
It
And remember,
feels
that's how Luella felt. She was like, "No, we leaving these slave owners behind."
right, because
We
he gonna think that he gonna get up there and recreate what he has here. That's not what we're looking for, freedom.
That's right.
But William, the brother, always had this kind of love for his other brother, Robert,
Love for his brother. I mean, it's that's family.
as
And
family, and
so
to be able to kind of work through that felt difficult. Like, I have all this going on at one time, and he's like, "Ah, Lord help me,"
yes,
right? And figured it out, and figured out how to love one another even through that circumstance.
yes. So
Very tough. And again, Robert still has more to do that make me want to. Good job writing
yes,
that
but
guy.
we can't give all of that
Can't
away.
give all the details. I'm like,
I'm telling you, Robert, really, every turn that I was researching and finding out about him, I was like, he left me with my mouth open a
every
few
time.
times because I
Yep.
was like, what? I
Robert is a piece of work, ladies and
yeah.
gentlemen. You
Robert
should.
brought the drama.
He did. He did.
Definitely for the book. Because I was going, well, where's the drama at first? And as I kept researching, I would go, oh, there it is. And it's for Robert.
Robert is a synonym for drama, because this
Yeah.
guy. Oh my goodness. Anyway, read the book. There's also a lot of love and connection between Luella, the king and queen,
Mhm.
Luella and William. Talk to me about, even in those times, it was difficult to love one another in their circumstance, but as they're moving forward, they're learning to love each other in that that new circumstance, how that works. Now they're king and queen. That's a different angle that comes in. Children, are now in the mix long in their
Mhm.
life, and now they have to love their kingdom and their queendom. Like,
Mhm.
tell me about how you kind of worked their relationship. And again, with your view that you had there, it was a loving and a victorious way.
Well, I wanted to show Queen Luella as someone who struggled to love because of the circumstances of her life during slavery, and I wanted people to see William and how you can't help but love him
Hmm.
because he was just so good to her. And you have a man make you a queen,
Like,
you're not gonna love him.
they'll love him to the death. Wait, don't let that man get
It
five
was
feet
like,
5 feet out of your way.
hold up, wait
That's a
a
good man.
minute.
And she was
And
really really good to him. So it
yes,
was it was a
and
great
he was
match.
really good to her. And so their love just worked. And it was one of the things that I really enjoyed writing in this book. Luella coming to understand love and coming to accept it, coming to feel it, and to even, you know, understand that, she still would rather have it even if she loses it.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
and so it's a beautiful story, and I'm just thankful I was able to tell it.
And then the last part was the people. Again, coming out of a really tough situation, and then now going into an unknown. There's no game plan. There's no help and resources like you mentioned, but they found ways in which to love one another.
Yes.
And the sweetest moment in the book, I'll give this one thing away, people, was when Luella was getting ready for the walk up the hill to be coronated, and the way the women kind of gathered around her, and
Mhm.
for once, probably in this large of a way, she was treated like a like royalty, right?
Yes.
And I remember there was moments where the women were doing small things that we would see as small, right? But in that moment, because they've never had this thing done to
It
them,
was it was it was
it was
large. It was,
huge.
yeah, it wasn't small to them because like you said, coming out of conditions where you're thought of as less than human, and you're not thought of as a people who deserve anything of value, anything good, uh, to then have it heaped on you.
Hmm.
It's like, wow. And it was Luella learning to receive it. I I mean, now if you want to talk about something I spent my time on, I spent my time on that scene because I loved it. And I knew that the reader would get it when they began to read that, and that would bring some joy into the story, and I
Hmm.
wanted that so badly for them.
It was an important scene though, right? Because
Mhm.
at that point, they're all kind of figuring it out, all for one, one for all. They were starting to get this good formation, but that moment was an honor to her and the work that she has done. That yes, we see you as not only somebody that's alongside us, but that you've been leading us in
Yes.
such a magnificent way, and we trust you. I would I would think in that time frame, somebody saying they love you is great, but to say that they trust, like, I
Mm,
can't see myself being enslaved and trusting anybody, right?
correct,
Especially
correct.
not
I'm sleeping with one eye open, like,
all the time, because you don't
yeah,
know if you're going to be taken to
yeah, with
go.
something under your mattress, like in misery, like
Who
pulling
trust? trust you with my life? No, no, ma'am. Sorry.
Yeah,
And
no.
to give that honor to her, that was, I think that was stronger than giving her a crown of diamonds,
Mhm.
because that's so
Mhm.
hard in that time frame. So when you wrote it, I was like, wow, this is building to something special in these 5, 6 pages or whatever it was. But it was
Yes.
really important to the story.
Thank you.
So Luella is our queen, William's our king, Robert is, I don't know what we're gonna call him, but he's in the pages. A lot of
Mhm.
other great characters. There was the traveling minister. Is that what we want to call him?
Yes. Yeah, he was a traveling minister, and his name was Ezel Couch, and, the research showed so when they get to North Carolina, there's, like, 200 people with them.
Mhm.
They end up with over 400 people in this whole community, and it is mainly because Ezel Couch, as he's out ministering from place to place, and he's running into people that don't have any
He's like,
place
come
to
on.
stay. And he's like, I know where you can go. I know where there's some people that will take care of you. And he would bring them to the happy land.
Yeah. And again, I'm projecting that's probably not a very safe thing for him to do,
Probably
right?
not at
Because
that
he's
time.
traveling around in the roads by himself.
Mhm. And
A lot of
they
chaos
said
after
he
the Civil
traveled
War.
mostly around South Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, he could have been snatched up, taken back
Mhm.
to somebody's plantation,
Mhm.
or hurt because of something else.
Correct.
Again, no hospital, no ambulance to come pick him up,
Oh,
but
no,
he
we
was
weren't
doing God's
allowed
work.
in the hospitals, then, we weren't yeah, we weren't allowed.
No, I'm trying to think what was the other, and then the other part that even how you got into Happy Land, you know, those pieces felt like something we could even mimic now. Uh, I kind of remember reading the story and I'm like, this community idea, this sharing of resources, this
It's a socialistic type of society.
it is.
We would consider that, in our capitalistic, society here in America, but it worked for them. It was a, all for one, one for all, and it was a sharing. It was, if you need, we got you. And we don't really have a lot of that here.
Yeah, it's more like one for one, right?
Yeah,
It's like I'm
and you
out for
better pick
myself.
yourself up by your own bootstraps.
That's right. And we have communities that probably could benefit from just that kind of model. But you got
Absolutely.
to have the trust, because
You
in
have
this particular model that this Happy Land had, it was everything goes into a pot,
everything went into the pot, and the
and we
king
all
controlled the pot.
came out equal on the other
And
end.
yes, and you had to trust that the king was
Woo.
evenly divvying that up.
Listen, Llewellyn, William,
Right.
you didn't write in here that they were like watching themselves with one eye open in the book,
Right.
but there was some people that didn't like it, and you would imagine that's natural, but a great model that it
Correct.
was. There's no rich and poor.
Right. And that was a little bit of my, I went on and put that in the story because I couldn't imagine that everybody was okay with that. So that's
No,
why I wanted to show some people going, what y'all doing with the money?
yeah,
Or, what's going on, with this, because that's just people.
right, right,
That's just how we are. We don't necessarily trust that, people are doing the right thing. Everybody doesn't. There's going to be somebody in that group that's stirring the pot, and that's saying you better watch them.
let
So,
me let me see them books, and everybody's
right.
accounting at that point. Yeah.
I'm gonna need them books right now. So yeah.
I
So
feel like that's the minister in you coming out, because those church meetings when the budget comes back out and everybody's got to look at the tithes and offerings. Everybody becomes a CPA.
Right, right,
Well, no, great. Again, great pieces, and they might not have been the entire story. The traveling minister was. He was really important for one particular
yeah.
reason. You need to read the book. Um, but there was a
Oh,
lot of good
yes,
pieces
yes,
in there.
yes,
You know what I'm talking about right here.
yes. They
Um,
got to read the book for that.
Got to read the book for that. We ain't giving you that one for free. But there's a lot of good pieces, and it was just kind of like, how would the story, how would life progress on this journey from going from 100, 200, whatever, up to the numbers that they got to. Now, in your research, the actions of the surrounding town or towns, I think it was near Hendersonville, and
Mhm.
I forgot what the other ones that were close by. In your research, did they say that this was this seen or like seen as negative? Were they like, hey, we need to get these people out of here? Was it a lot of that kind of activity happening? Or I know we had some pieces of it in the story, but was it worse or about the same as what you wrote?
In my research, there wasn't much about that part of it. It
Mm,
was just the story of how this kingdom was built. So
mm,
that was a part that I had to say, wait a minute. I understand the times and I understand why they would want to be in the Appalachian Mountains because they were away from watchful eyes.
right,
And
right.
so then I need to bring in bits about the time period and what would have been going on. And oh, you say you got a kingdom and it's Ku Klux Klan not far from here. That's going to be a problem.
Right,
And
right.
so then I need to bring that into the story. But a lot of the research, when I first started researching, all I would find was this is how this happened. And it was just like this straight line. And I'm like, no, it didn't just happen that easy,
Yeah.
And so, you have to keep researching it, keep researching. And so then I'm researching the time period and what was going on here. And then, I research and I find out in South Carolina, uh, there was this whole group of Ku Klux Klan that ends up getting arrested and how then people and so I asked myself also, why did they buy this land but wait over a decade before they filed the deed in the deeds
Hmm.
office? And so to my mind, it had to do with the level of violence that was going on with the Ku Klux Klan and things like that. And so, if you look at the dates and the time period, is when the Ku Klux Klan is like put down at this time,
Right,
and
right.
and so that's when they decide to go ahead and file the deed. And so I have to I put those pieces in the story.
Right. So you're taking multiple pieces of research
Yes,
and kind of weaving a story around facts. So,
correct.
okay, that makes sense.
Mhm.
No, that makes a lot of sense because I didn't even think about that overlay of the Ku Klux Klan being, in the mix, right?
They were
So,
they were very heavy in South Carolina, and to the point where, like I said, they arrested. I can't. I have it in my research. I can't remember the number of them, but then of course I think did any of them serve jail time? Because that's what ends up happening. They'll
yeah.
arrest them, but then it's like, oh, go home to your wife.
And just don't do it again. Right.
Right. I'm hanging people. And
Right, right.
so,
Yeah. No, and that was like pieces of the real life that was like, all right, well, we can't tell the story without that piece in there because it was real. It really
yes.
did happen. And it would explain a lot of what happened to them as people. Um, Tell me, you told me something that you took a lot of time to write, that scene where Luella's getting ready to get coronated. Tell me something that was in the book that was really difficult to write.
there were two scenes that were really difficult to write for me, and I can't tell you about those because those two really give away um, some parts of the story that would really hurt the reader to
Yeah,
know
yeah.
about ahead of time. And they were, let's say, you'll know what I'm talking about as I tell you, they were um, very problematic for Luella.
Okay.
There were times when she didn't feel like going on
Yeah.
because of these two situations. And when I researched and discovered that this is what happened, I was like, well, I have to write the
Got to write that
story
in there.
the
Yeah.
way it does happen. But man, if I wanted to be a fiction writer, those were two things I would have changed. I
Yeah.
would have changed them. Just no readers, I would have changed it. It would have turned out different. But
And I think I know which scenes you talk or which parts you're talking about, and they
yes,
were hard to read
yes,
uh, because you're rooting for the characters. You're like, God, I'm hoping they just leave this plantation and everything gets to happy land, and it is happy the whole time, right?
right.
And that's just not realistic.
It's
So,
not it's not real life. And
and that's
so
not their story, right?
and
They
these
didn't.
people, they lived on this earth. And so you get their real life. This is what happened. And so their story is a journey. There are parts that will break your heart, but there are
Mhm.
also parts that will cause you to smile, and that will cause you to go, "Oh," and cause you to be inspired,
Yep.
you know, for the tenacity, for the grit to get back up, you know, even when life tries to knock you down. And so it's a beautiful story. It truly is.
I
But
want
it's
to.
a true story.
It is a true
So I
story.
have
That's the
to tell
part
it
that
the
got me.
way.
I'm like, she didn't just write this off out of imagination. This is this really happened. And I'm like, I live near the North Carolina border, and
Yeah.
I'm like, man, this is. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, if
And
this story existed and I didn't know this one, how many of these
how
stories
many
are out
more?
there?
How many more? And I actually walked on the land that they
Ooh.
once lived on. I received permission to come to the happy land, and man, it was like I'm looking around, and there's a structure that is still on the land where they built their homes, and they used this type of stone for the fireplace. Well, there was one stone structure left and the owner keeps it there,
Mhm.
in honor of the Kingdom of the Happy Land people.
Wow.
And I put my book right on it, the picture of it. It's a
That's got to be
beautiful,
a spiritual experience. Like,
beautiful
oh
in
man.
a beautiful land. I was standing on the kingdom, standing on the land
And you got
where
to
a
think
king,
at
where
some
a king
point,
and queen once walked.
that's what I'm saying. Look, you got to think at some point they did exactly what you did and just stood back and marveled, right? You want to
Hmm.
talk about how I got over? This is we went from
That's
not
right.
too long ago being
And
on a
now we
planet.
own all
We
this
own all
land.
this. Oh man. And just for a moment to be able to breathe, that mountain, well, the hills and the mountain air, the
Yes.
stuff that you helped build, those houses they were building themselves,
Yes.
that's got to be an amazing feat.
They
I'm just
were
trying to.
very self-sufficient people.
Oh yeah, but that was by design too, right? So when they
Yes.
asked, "Hey, I want to come on to the Happy Land," well, what can you do?
That's right. That's right.
You're not. There's no lounging around here. We're gonna do some work. So listen, fantastic work. I said this privately. I want to say it publicly. I really enjoyed the book. I've been doing something where I try to be more intentional about reading not just everything. Even as a bookstore owner, I get thousands of books thrown at me,
Hmm.
but I want to read stuff that means something because I think of my time reading 30 books as
Hmm.
precious. And I'm
Yes.
glad I read this book. It is a fantastic
Thank
real life story, but how you depicted it in such a loving way. There's victory all throughout the book, and there's a sense of like pride in what these people did in their lives, and it came out in this story. So, one, I want to thank you for writing it that way. You could have taken it left. You could have said, "I'm going to be a nonfiction writer today,
you.
and I'm just going to tell the story the way the facts are written." But you made
Right.
sure to highlight some of the things that were really important for us as readers to be able to take from this story.
Yes. I wanted for the reader to be able to just read a story. My favorite parts of the Bible is the Old Testament because it reads like a novel.
It
And
does.
I've always been a big reader. So I would read the Old Testament. I'm like reading this story and I would always be amazed and just be able to just read it because it just it flows so well and it just tells the story of those real people who once lived and walked on earth, and I get to kind of get a bird's eye view of the life they lived, when they were on earth. And so yeah, and so I tried to do that, with the American Queen. Just give us a bird's eye view of the life that King William and Queen Luella lived when they were on earth, and how they tried to do good for the people who entrusted who trusted them.
So I actually, you're not gonna believe this. So I'm just gonna tell it. I'm not lying when I said there's a question on my paper that because I found out you were a minister, I was gonna ask you a question, and you actually started to answer it. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask it now. We like to start debates here at Resist, and one of the things that we have been debating has been if the Bible stories were written as television series and movies, we think that it would be a blockbuster if they told it right. What story in the Bible that is not told that often, not Noah's Ark, um, not the crucifixion, what story in the Bible would you think would make for compelling, thrilling, uh, either in the theater or in TV?
Mm. Hmm. Rahab,
Okay, tell the people why that one would be
because
the story.
because Rahab was a harlot, and she became the grandmother of Jesus. And that story to me, or the great grandmothers, but in that line, that story to me shows God's great love for us, even when we don't always get it right. When we have done things that other people will look at us and say, "Oh, well, they don't deserve this or they don't deserve that." God said, "This one right here deserves to be the grandmother
Right,
of
right.
the Savior of this world." And so I love the story of Rahab.
Most of us, and when we have this debate, is like it's got to be a story with David in it because the backstories or the sub stories of David, not the David and Goliath stuff. I'm
Mhm.
talking about.
Oh, David and all his women.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like, we might have to put that on HBO. Like that's
Yeah, yeah, that's
that ain't gonna make CBS.
that's not for regular consumption.
No,
David was a mess.
we love
But
telling David and David
he
danced and David
loved
sang.
God.
Oh
He
my,
loved
yes,
God, but he had a weakness for them women. That's
yes.
why that's why when he was dying, they said lay this nice pretty little girl next to him. They said, and if he don't touch her, we know he
We know he
he
gone.
he on his way out.
Because if he was, he'd have found his hand.
He would have been like, hey, because King David liked the women.
Look, it's a great testament that God can use anybody because
God can use anybody. He really can.
yeah,
But and like I say, but King David loved God.
he
But
did.
like I say, we all got our issues. He
Got
he
our
he
issues.
he loved the women too.
They could do a mini series on David,
They could.
and not tell it all because there's a lot of stuff that are good that he did,
Yes.
a lot of inspirational stuff, but for sure, compelling TV.
Yes, there was a
Um,
lot of good stuff, but then there were things where I felt like as I read him, I was like, oh, I mean, but again, showing his humanness.
mhm,
And the thing I love about the Bible is that, you know, God didn't hide what his people have done. You
mhm.
know, he's saying David is the apple of my eye, and David is a mess.
Right, right,
And look at what he's done, but it's because of his great love for God, and that he when brought to his attention his issues, David was willing to repent, and David was willing to say, even though he was king, he always understood that there was one higher than him.
right, right.
Sometimes we get in these positions and we forget that, we still not the head.
No,
you know
no, we got a little pedestal, but not the big one.
Yeah, we not the big, but see, David never forgot, and I truly believe that that's why God um so honored him with everything that he had. But he struggled. He
He did.
struggled because of his issues. It was, people need to read that story. It's a cautionary tale
Yeah,
because he went through even with his children. So his life was not a rose petal. Because of the things that he chose to do, there was some struggle in there for him.
for sure. And I think the it being told or done that way is better for us who are imperfect, right?
That's
If
right.
all of the characters had been perfect in their ways and blessed and graced by God, then we wouldn't see ourselves in it, right?
Right.
I there's
That's
a
right.
there's a liar somewhere who's looking at the book and like, oh, I can see a liar.
Right.
There's a womanizer who's like, yep, I can see a womanizer
Right.
there. And what's my way out of that?
That's right.
Right? How do I do that? Well, I got the book is filled with examples that how the preacher say they're gonna find your row.
That's right. That's right.
You're in that book somewhere.
You in
Just
it. You are
if
in it.
you're honest with yourself
But that's the problem. A lot of us are not honest with
and are honest.
ourselves.
Yeah,
A lot of us, um, we look in a mirror and we don't see what manner of person we have become.
that's
And
right.
therein lies the problem. We can't fix what we don't see.
Nope. Nope. So listen, fantastic work. I want to do two things before we go. One, and you can do it in whatever order you feel. One, I want to you tell people. I know you're writing and you're writing a lot, but what's the last great book you've read? And then two, tell the people where you're going to be next on your journey, especially in promoting the American Queen.
Okay. So I've read a couple of good books lately, but the last one. See, I've been busy in my writer cave, so I'm trying to think of
And it's okay if it's like
and
last
the
year.
last books I've been reading are nonfiction on the book that I'm writing. But the thing about Home by Rhonda McKnight, amazing.
Okay.
And I love The House of Eve by
That's
Sadiqa
Sadiqa.
Johnson.
Oh yeah.
Um, Queen of Exiles by Vanessa Riley.
Mhm.
I could go on and on, but
You got some gems on that list.
there are some great books out there, and so I could go on and on. Right now, I'm reading nonfiction, but I can't wait to get back to my fiction because I've got a bunch I've already purchased.
Yep, and they're stacking up behind you, and you
It
don't want to get too
always
high.
does. I keep a big old TBR list because I'm always buying a book. I'm a reader. Writers are readers. And so I love a good book. And I don't typically read mine after I write them. I got to read somebody else's story.
Right, right, right.
And so, but where I'm going to be, so this weekend, I'm going to be in Atlanta. So if you're in Atlanta, come see me. First, I'm going to be at the airport. So if you're flying out of Atlanta or flying in, I'm going to be at Simply Books at 10 a.m. And then I'm going to be at Hudson News at noon. Simply Books is in Terminal A. Come see me. Come grab a copy of The American Queen.
Paperback and hardcover is out, by the way.
Yes, got the hardcover too. I think they'll just have the paperback though. Yep. At the Hudson News. And then I'm going to be at 44th and 3rd on Friday night with Vanessa Riley. We are going to be in conversation talking about the queens, the American Queen and the Queen of Exile. And 44th and 3rd, that will be at 6:00 on Friday, February the 9th. And then on Saturday, I will be at the Bookworm at 3 p.m. So that's in Powder Springs, Georgia. So come see me if you're in Georgia. Next weekend, I'm going to be in Charleston and Goose Creek. So I'll be at the library on that Friday, and I'll be at Turning Page Bookshop on that Saturday. It's on my website. Come see me.
That's what I was going to say. Go check out the website. You also have Instagram too. Tell them where to find your Instagram.
Author Vanessa Miller on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook as Vanessa Miller Pierce. So you can follow me on Facebook or either Author Vanessa Miller on Facebook. But I'm mostly on my Vanessa Miller Pierce page. So come out to one of the events or follow me on Instagram or Facebook and get yourself a copy of The American Queen. And you're selling it at Resist Bookstore, right?
That's right. And we have book plates. You are gracious enough to send us some book plates. So we got a few left, not a lot. We got a few left.
That's right.
And we have the copies of the book in hardcover and paperback.
Oh, you got it in the hardcover as well. And yes, and people have been buying the hardcover. And I'm like, wow.
I'm a hardcover guy. It's mostly because I like to slam books. So when I was reading Robert, these paperbacks don't hold up to these slams. They don't. Robert was my guy. Every book I read, and that's why I think y'all fictional writers do it on purpose. Because there's a Robert. When y'all read the book, come back and tell me was I right? Because Robert got me slamming books, but I love hardcovers. That's my thing. So this is my copy. Yes. I have my book plate in it, but this is a hardcover for me, and we do have the paperback as well.
Okay, cool.
Now listen, great conversation. Really appreciate you taking the time out. I know this road with touring for your book can be exhausting and tiresome, so we thank you for taking the time. And glad your voice held up for us, so we're good.
It's coming back.
It's coming back.
I'm hearing it. It's coming back. So I'm gonna be good for this weekend. Yes.
So look, get ready, Atlanta. You're gonna have some good fire. North Carolina, South Carolina, wherever you are. Make sure you come out and check out this book, this author. I think you'll enjoy it. And I don't normally like to say that blanket because everybody likes different things, but you will enjoy The American Queen. So thank you very much, Vanessa. I appreciate your time and look forward to great success for your book as it progresses out in the world.
Appreciate you having me.
Thank you.
Bye.